the Arabian Racehorse Podcast with Debbie Burt and Stephen Molyneux.
Hi, and welcome to another edition of the Arabian Racing Podcast, our first one of 2022. I'm out in Dubai and we're going to look at the Dubai Kahayla Classic, Group 1 race for Arabians over 2,000 metres with Stephen Molyneux, who is based out here and has recently been promoted to UAE handicapper for Arabians. Hi, Stephen.
Hi, Debbie. How are you?
Yeah, very good, very good. Enjoying the sun. How's your new job going?
Yeah, it's going well so far. Only been here 2 or 3 weeks, but just sort of seeing the lay of the land in the last few weeks of the season out here in the UAE, and looking forward to sort of reviewing everything over the summer and getting properly started next season, I suppose.
Excellent. And obviously, this will be your first Kahayla Classic as a handicapper. What do you think of the field?
Yeah, it's not a bad field at all, as you'd expect for a Group 1 that's worth $1 million. Obviously, we're missing the two best horses, best Arabians in the world, in the form of Hagar de la Douce and Lady Princess, but naturally they're probably more turf horses anyway. So largely the best dirt horses seem to be there. The Saudi form is well represented, and the best that the UAE has to offer, as you'd expect, is in the lineup as well. So there's no real standout. I think from the local point of view, RB Rich Like Me appears to be the best hope, but there are plenty in there that have been winning impressively, and it's as most championship races should be. You know, all the pieces of form are going to come together on Saturday. Indeed,
and if we just run through them now, I went to see Ernst yesterday, and although I didn't see him out on the track, I saw ARH, and I spoke to him about what he thought his horse's chances were.
Yeah, he's an exciting horse. I mean, it's funny, Tag was riding him last year and he said, oh, he feels like the best horse we got, and the same he rode at the beginning of the year, and he said he gives him a brilliant feel, and he was correct. I mean, the horse has done nothing wrong. He's won, I think, 3 and been second, and he won a Group 2 last time out by very impressively. So, he's an exciting horse. I mean, the distance is maybe a question mark. The Arabs, that's the one thing they do, they've got stamina. So it's harder to put speed into them than put stamina. So, I'm not too worried. I think if they fit and everything goes right, they'll stay.
Right. And what do you think of AF ARH?
Well, there's definitely an element of the unknown still really about him. He's got a not too dissimilar profile to the horses that Ernst run in this race the last couple of years in Maha and Alwajel, and of course they either won or very nearly won. So he's got to improve again, but I think Ernst is a past master at bringing these horses along gradually, almost going into the race with something to prove. It probably in his case a couple of things to prove, both stamina and whether he's good enough or not. But I think the crucial point was he was able to get the horse a break since winning the Group 2 at Meydan in February. He didn't really want to run Super Saturday. He was a little bit on the fence as to whether the horse was going to get in or not, but took the chance and he did. So he goes into the race with a nice progressive profile, but he does need to improve. It was only a couple of starts ago he was beaten off a mark of 75 in a handicap at Al Ain, albeit a good race, because the horse that beat him that day, Ashton Tourette's, is also in the race, or was just behind him that day. So yeah, he's progressive, but he's going to need to step up to the plate. But like I say, granted a fair wind, Ernst Ortel could easily have won the last 3 renewals of this race. So you've really got to respect what he's running.
Of course. And Ashton Tourette's slightly older horse. He's a 7-year-old. What do you think of him?
Well, again, to look at, he's a fantastic looking horse, and perhaps no great surprise that he is now almost coming to himself. He is a 7-year-old. He's had 19 starts, but his recent improvement has kind of mirrored that of ARH, really. As I said, they met in a Group 3 at Abu Dhabi more recently, where they were lowly rated, but they finished first and second, I think it was, and that elevated Ashton Tourette's his rating, and he confirmed it with a second in the President's Cup at Abu Dhabi, and then finished third behind Hamim back over 7 furlongs. So he's really taken a big step forward in recent starts. I'd say he's more consistent on turf. So I think he's got to prove that he can sort of run to his rating of 112 over this sort of trip as well. And the President's Cup form did take a bit of a knock last week in the Emirates Championship with Samud not exactly running up to his best. So he, again, a bit like Al-Hajjaj, he's earned the right to run in the race, but he's now got to prove he can go and win a genuine international Group 1, which on most of the evidence we've seen from him so far does appear to be a little bit beneath him. But fascinating that they've booked Christophe Lemaire for the assignment. They could have had many a locally based jockey, but they've gone with him, and yeah, he deserves to be in the race. And I'd be surprised if you looked at the paddock and perhaps saw a nicer looking horse than him, should we put.
Okay, and a horse we already know quite a lot about, Barak. He's 9. He's got plenty of winning Group 1 form. But do you think possibly he may be coming towards the end of the road for him?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, he progressed very late in life, as we saw last season, to earn his Group 1 win and earn the right to run in last year's Kahayla Classic. I think limitations were exposed to a degree in that race, and most of the local pieces of form, they've largely consisted of one horse winning impressively, whereas Barak has been the consistent in these races, and he's not quite been good enough to win them. If you look back at his last 3 races, he's been fairly well beaten by Jagurta, De Monlau, Raja, and Derby Rich Like Me, who all line up on Saturday. So that suggests to me he's perhaps a notch or 2 below top class. I think best scenario for him is that he finishes around about 7th or 8th, which is what he did last year behind Darian.
And another one there, Daggy Lotoir, not a horse I know an awful lot about.
Yeah, I think he's probably got to improve the most out of the local horses. I was actually disappointed with him last time at Al Ain in a Group 3, the Al Ain Mile. He finished 2nd behind AF Sanad, who's an old horse and quite a lowly rated horse relative to what he's going to come up against on Saturday. He should have won that race, really. He only finished 2nd. You could argue that the mile is sharp enough for him nowadays. His last win did actually come in that corresponding race last year where he beat Darius de Payon. So from what I've seen of him, I'd suggest he's probably a fair way below the level that's going to be required to win the race. And like I said, I think he's probably going to struggle most out of the locally based horses anyway.
And then we've got Durga Mathbar, who's a horse we both know a bit about. I was really impressed with his run in the Al Manifa over in Saudi. Much as his former trainer Phil Collington said, he thought he might stay on at the end, and he certainly did that. And although I think this is probably a step above him at this stage, and possibly a little bit on the sharp side in this company, he's a nice young horse, and he's got scope for the future.
Yeah, he certainly has. I think, like you say, echoing the stamina that he shows that he could probably do with this race being over 1.5 miles. Really, he's only ever really getting going at the end of his races. But he's a 5-year-old. He obviously finished 3rd in Saudi last time, as you said, on the turf, and that form obviously marries in quite nicely with a couple of these who are going to reoppose. What he's shown since going to the UAE is that he is consistent, and I suppose his finishing position is largely going to rely on where he is sort of 3 furlongs from home. If he's mid-pack, then I can see him plugging on past 1 or 2 and maybe grabbing a top 6 finish. If he's out with a washing, then he's probably going to struggle to get involved. But yeah, he's improved nicely. His form ties in again with 1 or 2 of these, the likes of Raja and Curtis Del Rock, whom he's finished behind. And I think that Saudi run last time did suggest that he's going the right way. Again, similar to Ashton Tourette's, you could probably make a point for him being a little bit more consistent on turf, but I think that's because he does get outpaced in his races, and it's harder to make up the ground on the dirt. So I guess with a bit of experience, like he could improve on that score and maybe one more for next year. But good to see these ex-English horses do particularly well. We've seen plenty of them from the Shadwell sale. Be impressive here in Dubai, and obviously Durga Mathbar came a different route, but he's done very well, and like I say, deserves to be in the race on the back of that Saudi run.
Absolutely. And then now we have the defending champion Durayan. The connections, when I was out in Saudi, connections were a bit concerned that they felt that the track surface didn't suit him out there as well as the dirt at Meydan does. What do you think?
Yeah, I definitely agree. A lot of the European thoroughbred trainers said the same, didn't they? After the Saudi Cup in particular, Mishrif, who was a notable disappointment. And I tend to agree. It looked deeper. He's more of a speed horse. The race on Saturday is going to take roughly 5 or 6 seconds less than that in Saudi. And I actually thought he shaped just as well this year as he did in the race 12 months ago. He was probably a bit too keen. I know Arabians are tricky as a rule, but I think he's potentially a little bit trickier than most. We saw last year how he almost threw the race away. He gave Al-Wajel a second chance almost, and he will need producing with exact time. In stall 16 is not going to make things easy either. But I think the fact that it's a quicker track is certainly going to help him, and he'll be on the bridle a long way. It's just a case of whether something out battles him. I think with the speed favouring track that we've alluded to, the fact it's the first race on the card, that's also going to help the main local hope, RB Rich Like Me. So I'd see Darian certainly running or finishing closer than he did in Saudi. I think his profile is remarkably similar, having won in Pau and shaped well in Saudi. So he comes here with a live chance. Stall 16, I'd imagine he's dropped in anyway, isn't he? So probably not too much of an issue for him. And I think he'll run really well. I think he's everything that suggests of his profile tells me that he's probably a similar horse to last year. It's just a case of whether RB Rich Like Me, maybe one or two others, are better than Al-Wajel, who was finished second last year.
Of course. And then we've got First Class. That's another young improver. Started off in America, won a grade 3 and several other races on the dirt. So the surface isn't going to be a problem, albeit that he's been running more recently on turf.
Yeah, he has. I think he's only had the one start on dirt in Qatar, but obviously all those American runs came on the surface, so shouldn't be too much of an issue. And yeah, as many horses that joined the Alban de Mule stable, he's gradually improved. He obviously won in Saudi last time, where he beat Soko, who he's a highly rated horse over here now, owned by the Royal Cavalry of Oman, and he came in with good French form. He'd finished second in the President's Cup prep, so that's probably quite a useful piece of form. Soko actually won over in Oman over the weekend, although you'd hardly call that much of a form boost given the types of horses he was beating that day. But just like the way this First Class is progressive coming into the race, I suppose if we were treating it as a thoroughbred race, you'd maybe be a bit concerned that he's been running on turf, and now after a good few starts on the grass, he's switching back to the dirt. It could be a bit of a culture shock for him, but no, I think he's got a very nice profile for the race, and be a first representative from Qatar for a good while, if memory serves. So it'll be interesting to see how those two form lines marry up.
And I saw his breeder Deb Milhoff earlier this week at the Breeze Up sale, and I had a chat with her, and we can hear what she has to say about having a runner in the Kahayla Classic.
Well, I'm so thankful that we have been given this opportunity to showcase our horses, and I'm very proud of First Class and Albane and his jockey Roman Thomas. They've done an excellent job with this horse, and I just wanted to be a part of this unbelievable experience, since I've never had an Arabian horse ever run in the Dubai Kahayla Classic, and so it's very special for me. So I'm very happy.
Considering we've just been talking about Qatar form, and we've got another Qatari horse here, Hadi de Carrère, who's obviously run in France, owned by Qatari. I think the last Qatari horse was Redder, trained by Julian Smart, wasn't it? I think to run here. Obviously, he comes into the race on the back of a really impressive win in Saudi, and he looks a really exciting horse. I've seen him training on the track. He's been out every day this week, and he looks in good order.
Yeah, he's obviously probably the proven horse and got the best form in the race, having won the Abaya Classic in Saudi last time, beating Talal Al Khaladia, who I don't think the locals expected to be beaten on that occasion. I think the feature about the victory was stamina. He did largely outstay them, and that's my concern coming back to a speedier track here at Meydan, that he might just get a little bit too far out of his ground early on. But look, he's very lightly raced. Only had the 7 starts. His form in France is very good. First start on dirt for him when winning in Saudi. So again, another element, trained by one of the best Arabian trainers in the world. So there's a lot to like about him. Just my one concern, amongst the favourites, was that he might just get a little bit outpaced. But he's drawn well in stall 2, and the highest rated horse in the race. And you'd hope, sort of from for it being a genuine Group 1 race, that he is in the mix late on.
Yeah, he did actually run in the Pau race with Darian, so it
wasn't much of a race, really, was it? This
well,
twinkled around.
They all landed in a heap, really, with Jarrett at the back. But the one note of concern, I spoke to Thomas Forsey at the beginning of the week, and for all that he said that the horse is in good order and he's come out of the race well, and they're quite confident. He did say he thought the ground obviously would be the surface is a bit slower than, a bit quicker than it is out in Saudi. So that was just a little element of concern, I think, from the trainer there.
And it's the first race on the card as well, so it's going to be fairly warm, and the track is invariably even quicker earlier in the card. So I think he's probably right to have those slight reservations about him. Yeah,
absolutely. And continuing now with Saudi form, we've got Hamdani Khalid Al Khalidia, who I think people I think he was expected to run better out in Saudi than he did. He'd won the president of the UAE Cup, which is now a listed race out there, quite well, beating Mutawakal Al Khalidia. Bit of a mouthful, that one. Glad I'm not a commentator. But yeah, it just didn't seem to fire in Saudi last time.
No, I think it was his first start on turf, which is probably the obvious excuse for him. I'd say they thought they had all bases covered in the Abaya Classic, and that's why they sent this horse onto the turf. So he's a fascinating prospect going back onto the dirt. His 3 previous wins had come by a combined total of 14 3/4 lengths. So he was impressive, and we've seen these Saudi horses come over and I wouldn't say dominate, but be very competitive at Meydan. The fact that they are relying solely on this horse, having had a couple run well in the Abaya Classic, is quite intriguing. I noticed he was around about 20 to 1 on the international markets. I think that's perhaps just a reaction to his defeat last time, which obviously came on a different surface. And I think if they delved a little bit deeper, they might find that this horse is going to be amongst the leading players. So yeah, I'd fully respect him as long as the relative lack of experience doesn't find him out.
Sure, absolutely, and he's certainly very unexposed, isn't he? And plenty of scope to improve beyond what he's shown so far. Jareth, he's not been an easy horse to train, and Elizabeth Bernard said that herself when we spoke in Saudi. So he's been a bit disappointing. He showed a bit of form, and it's kind of tailed off a bit, I think, of late. And he was well out the back, as I say, in that Pau race behind Darian and several of these.
Yeah, he'd probably be one of those that was on the cusp of, should he be invited or should he not? I think he sort of held on to his rating from 1 or 2 sort of questionable pieces of form, I would say, winning a Group 3 in Europe, and like you say, his form just does appear to have tailed off. We've spoken about the Pau race that Darian won. Yeah, it was a funny race, but he was beaten a long way in it, and he could only manage midfield in the race, the turf race in Saudi that was won by First Class. So I'd have reservations that 114 is probably a rating that's on the slip, and he needs to bounce back to the sort of form he showed when winning the corresponding Pau event last year, where he beat Darian and 1 or 2 of those group races in Europe over the summer. So yeah, he's probably one of the least likely winners for me, I would say.
Yeah, I'd agree with you there. And one of the more interesting ones, Jagurtha de Monlau. We saw him in the UK when he was second in the UK Arabian Derby to Hatal. And at that time, he carried his head quite a lot to one side in the finish and didn't look entirely either comfortable or happy with what he's doing. But he certainly progressed since coming out over here, and it was a good win last time.
Yeah, it was. Those sort of traits that you mentioned at Doncaster have been evident really in Dubai, which is why he didn't go on last season. His first start in the UAE was a good third behind Samoud in the President's Cup prep. That was his first start in the UAE, having come from France, and he just didn't go on from that. He basically hung his chance away in the President's Cup itself, and had one more run, I think, in the Emirates Championship, and was also well beaten. So he's probably a stereotypical French horse that was pushed hard in France, that's come over to the UAE and taken one or two starts to acclimatise or get used to racing. And he certainly benefited from the summer, as you say. He was a reasonable third, albeit against inferior opposition on his reappearance. But since that run, his two efforts have been good. You know, fifth in the President's Cup this year behind Samoud, and he just seemed to appreciate being allowed his head really last time at Meydan when he won the third round of the Maktoum Challenge. It wasn't a strong race. Obviously, a lot of the main protagonists were over in Saudi, and we've already mentioned how Barak has been a consistent in these races without being good enough to win, and he was second. Jagurta de Montlau very much got his own way out in front on that occasion. He does have the back class. I'd be a little bit surprised if he could dominate this race in the same manner, but at least that victory last time was a step back in the right direction. And as I say, back in France, he was capable at this sort of level. So he comes in there with a sort of a sneaky chance, I would say. I'd like to see him confirm that form from last time before you'd say he's a genuine Group 1, a genuine 120 horse. But there is I suppose, an element of the unknown about him.
And the next one, Curles de Rock, we were expecting to run in Saudi and didn't. And I know he's changed hands and there's been a few things going on there. So, but nonetheless, he had some good form at the start of the season out here, didn't he?
He did. He's definitely the one that intrigues me the most. 4 from 7 and impressive in winning the Group 2 at Meydan back in December, the Majani Stakes. Yeah, we've not seen him since then, and there are one or two theories floating around as to why. One of which includes that he was loose in the desert for an hour and a half one morning, having joined a new stable. He's now returned back to Ahmed El Maherbi, who was responsible for him, for all of his starts so far. I think the absence is the obvious worry. He'd have definitely run in a leg of the Maktoum Challenge, or indeed in Saudi, as you say. But to win the races that he has and the style that he has, his 4 victories have come by 8 1/4 lengths, 8 lengths, 15 lengths, and then 5 lengths last time, where he beat Harab, who won a Group 1 in Abu Dhabi last weekend. So I think he's definitely interesting. If he sort of came into this race on the back of a run a month ago, then I think he'd be amongst the leading fancies. But there just has to be one or two doubts as to why we've not seen him since December.
Yeah, it certainly would be a concern with some of these horses having run so well at this level recently. But anyway, on to Menir du Soleil, the horse who won the Silver Sword in last year's Amir Sword Festival, which of course is for 4-year-olds. And although it's not a group race, it is it's a conditions race. It is kind of group race quality. So it was certainly a very good performance. Had a bit of a break over the summer, and he came back and probably understandable after a break that he would find the Amir Sword and Lady Princess a bit much. So soon, having had a layoff.
Yeah, I think he's a sneaky one here.
Yeah,
sort of snuck into the race, probably right down at the basement rating of 111. But I think the reason he's probably got an invite is because he can improve on that, and probably some of his pieces of form entitle him to be rated a little bit higher than that, including his second in that race at Power a couple of starts ago behind Derian.
Yeah.
Obviously went to Doha and finished 6th in the Emir Sword. He was beaten a reasonable distance, but we are talking by some of the best turf horses in the world. And you could argue the 1.5 mile trip would have stretched him. So I think he's interesting. Go back to some of his form in France. He was close up behind Abbas, who would have been a live player in this. He's beaten Soko in a listed race at Toulouse. And I think he can, as long as he handles the dirt, then I think he's a definite player in this. Certainly a horse that can improve his current mark of 111.
And I think obviously, as we saw with First Class and the thoroughbreds that Alban took to Saudi, his stable's certainly in very good form at the moment.
Yeah, they are, and he'll relish targeting this race again, having had to sit on the sidelines a couple of times. And I think he's got two horses that have got decent enough profiles coming into this race.
And one horse which is I think he was fourth, wasn't he, in our UK Derby a good few years ago now, and has been around the block a bit with various owners and trainers, is Raja, who seems to have been reinvigorated by a dirt surface.
Yeah, he's taken well to it, rather late in life, as you say. He's an 8-year-old now, and he's one of those, I think, like the 5 or 6 of the locally trained horses that have all impressively won a race at Meydan this season. He beat Durgam Athbar by 6 1/4 lengths in round 2 of the Maktoum Challenge. He has been beaten by 2 of Saturday's contenders either side of that, including last time in the 3rd round of the Maktoum Challenge, where he was only 3rd behind Jagurta de Monlau. That to me does suggest he is probably vulnerable as an 8-year-old. I think he's probably going to struggle to adopt the sort of position that he wants to as well. He is drawn reasonably well in stall 5, but he does like to go forward, and I'm not sure he's going to have too much peace early on. So I think he's probably going to struggle a little bit. He does just seem to lack the potential of one or two of these, should we say.
And one with a lot of potential, and certainly a lot of people's idea of the winner, is I'll Be Rich Like Me. The only concern that I would have for him is still the trip. He certainly, in the Abaya, a lot of people fancied him there, and same 2,000 meters came up short. So what would be your thoughts? You'll have seen him run here and win here in his 2 starts in group races.
Yeah, and very impressive in both. And again, the form of those races is definitely open to question. There was no great depth to the fields, but he has won both those races very much impressively, and obviously joining Fauzi Nas, and I think being ridden by Adre de Vries has been quite crucial. We're watching some of his American races. I'm not totally convinced that the jockeys, should we say, were getting the very best out of the horse, and he's definitely improved since those sort of second placings to Paddy's Day. On his last couple of starts in America. The trip, yeah, I mean, look, he's stepping up from 7 furlongs and a mile, those 2 victories, to the 10 furlongs in Saudi last time. And no doubt he was outstayed, having shown good speed to lead from stall 10. But we keep going back to the point that the track is going to be quicker at Meydan. The race is going to take 5 or 6 seconds less than it will in Saudi. And all that's very much in his favour, as indeed is the draw in stall 1. So I think there's a lot in his favour. If he is, from what we saw in America, if he was taken on and sort of pressurized, he didn't look the most straightforward of horses. But I think he's changed on that score. Just his demeanor, the very fact Adre de Vries on him. They can't work him with anything else at home because Fauzi's only got one other Arabian, and he doesn't like the dirt. So they have to work this horse with some of the thoroughbreds. And I think he's probably improved for it. So yeah, he's the main local hope. He's the favourite for the race. If something's within a length of him, a furlong out, you could definitely be a little bit worried about the stamina. But I think he's just going to be hard to catch. He'll get the front, and whatever beats him whatever finishes ahead of him is going to have won the race.
And then we've got last of all, the only filly in the race, Lamat Shamal. She's trained by Jean de Mule, who's actually the nephew of Alban de Mule, and he's come into international racing quite quickly from only having started training in the last 2 years. I had a word with him on the track about her chances and what he felt about her.
Actually, she's in great form. We are outsider on the field. Luckily for us, we picked up a good draw. So 3 good horses are on our inside. We got the draw number 4. So yeah, we try just to follow the filly. The other horses and try to take the best place. Last time, probably made a mistake when I sent the filly in the group 1. She took the lead for the race, but she didn't ride from the last 3 months. So it was probably my mistake, but the filly now is in much better condition. ready to face the others. Well, we'll see. She already won on the sand, so.
And what do you think, Stephen?
Yeah, she's probably one of the harder ones to assess. Being a filly, a lot of her form has come in different types of races. She was behind a JRF over the summer, fourth in a Group 3 there. I feel she might be a little bit highly rated. She's never actually run in a Group 1, or she's run last time in Doha was her first run in a Group 1, and she was fairly well beaten on that occasion. So she does need to improve. She's a Group 2 winner, but like I say, just taking on the boys, it will be a first start on dirt. She has won on an all-weather surface elsewhere. Just her form is harder to sort of marry up against the pick of these. So for that reason, I thought she might struggle, and being the only filly as well in there is going to make life tough for her. But good to have a cosmopolitan feel to the race, different trainers involved, and I'm sure they'll be hoping she can run a good race.
And obviously that will be kind of the end of the golf season. I know there's the Gold Sword out in Qatar, but this sort of is the peak of the big 3 races that we have now from January through to March. And then we'll be looking ahead to Europe. And obviously in the UK, I went to see Phil Collington to see what thoughts he had, having had the Bayan Afbar win two group races, the only UK trained horse to win group races in the UK last year. And this is what he had to say.
So Bayan Afbar now, she's having a little bit of a break. In the last 12 months, she's ran 5 times. She won 4 dual group winner, and she was second on her other start. So she couldn't really have done any more. Ever so pleased with that. Now after she's finished her break, she'll come back for a prep race and hopefully then go to Goodwood, which the mile Group 1 distance would be ideal for her. And I think if also, like we can that time of year, if we got some rain and there's some give in the ground, it would also give her a better chance as well. So starting a new UK season this year, I'm quite looking forward to it with, again, another new bunch of horses. We've got a lot of exciting maidens. Obviously, since the death of the late Sheikh Hamdan, it will be different, but at the same time, we've managed to keep some Shadwell horses now under new ownership, and it will be nice to run those. As I also know a lot of pedigrees of the horses that we've got, so it'll be very exciting times seeing them get out, and hopefully we can have a lot of success. It's been great to see that the horses that I've trained, and also James Owen have trained, that had run previously here in the UK, have gone and won in the UAE, and it's really boosted UK racing, I feel, showing that the form is of a good level and the horses are well able to compete. And also, as you've mentioned, I've had some youngsters that were quite backward and not quite ready to run here in the UK. They've come out and either been placed or they've won. So it's really, the Shadwell horses over there have done great.
And what are your thoughts, Stephen? Obviously, we're going to be down on numbers without the strength of Sheikh Hamdan, but Afbar have certainly picked up the baton, not only with their own homebreds, but with horses that they bought from Sheikh Hamdan. And then we've also got, some of the smaller local, domestic breeders like Paul Simmons, who's got quite a few horses registered. Who would you be looking forward to for this year?
Yeah, it's certainly going to be a different dimension, isn't it? And it might take 1 or 2 seasons for everything to evolve, really. So it's probably a case of trying to sort of get through the next year or 2 without the support of Shadwell. I suppose there'll be an indirect support with various horses having been sold on, and obviously the legacy of their pedigree still being involved, but it does give other owners certainly more opportunities. I'm sure James Owen and Phil Collington will still be the 2 leading lights in terms of the horses that they have, but they're having to do things differently and not rely on on the support of Shadwell. So it's going to give one or two others an opportunity, but the program's out nice and early there for horses to, for trainers to target their horses at. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it goes, and might bring one or two back into the sport who felt they were a little bit up against it, should we say, in taking on Shadwell horses all the time. And yeah, we still hope for one or two horses from abroad to maybe come in for the season if they see opportunities. Sponsorship seems to be positive from one or two things that I've heard, so there'll be a good bit of prize money on offer. And yeah, hopefully it'll be a good season. And as in all walks of life, really, we're all having to sort of readjust to the various economic restrictions that are being placed on everyone and everything. And hopefully, Arrow can manage all that, survive, and get through the other end. So it'll be a interesting season to watch, I suppose.
Yeah, and of course we will definitely have a new champion owner, which adds a new dimension of excitement after the dominance of Shadwell. But certainly we'll be back on May the 3rd, I believe, and look forward to speaking to you in the run up to that.
Yeah, we'll certainly look forward to it. There'll be plenty of new owners, plenty of syndicates by the sounds of it. So hopefully a good opportunity for everyone to get involved at a lower level. That will certainly be the case.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for your time, and I'll see you on track tomorrow.
You will indeed.